live to Facebook.
Oh.
Hello, Facebook. Are you out there? So frustrating that we can talk to you, but you can't talk to us. Maybe we ought to do something about that.
We're live. We could be taking phone calls, right? Didn't you always say you wanted to do that?
Well, we're sitting here with phones. I guess we could.
No, I mean...
Nonetheless.
I mean phoned into the studio.
It's true. I do like live phone calls. I used to do that on the Act Up cable show.
Yeah?
Yep, 35 years ago.
We only took calls on this show once. It was the sodomy decision.
I like a conversation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Donahue used to take calls on the show.
Yep.
Caller? Go ahead, caller. Regis and Kathy Lee used to take calls. We're almost there.
Give them your phone number, see if anybody calls. Next week, perhaps, after the debate.
I think it's on our website.
Robbie Starbuck.
Paper Tiger?
Yeah. Well, I sent you the New York
Yes, I read it.
Magazine thing.
I read it. Thank you. And I actually, Rex sent me a way you get these things behind the paywall.
Well, I just sent you the actual thing.
Yep, I read it.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
And this week in the news.
Very little.
Well, I don't know. You'll see. What a way to start a show. Trump goes on an anti-trans tirade of lies before Moms for Liberty.
Oh, well, that is quite substantial. I guess that's a lot of news right there. I mean, not new news, but you get it. Here's some new news. J.D. Vance is a serial violator of the right-wing Bud Light boycott.
Hypocrite! Courts are turning against transgender rights across the country, except in New Hampshire.
And the Human Rights Campaign is hitting back at those mean corporations who are dumping their commitment to LGBTQ inclusion.
And major publishers and writers are suing Florida over their law excluding hundreds of books from school libraries.
We'll see what the courts say about that. The AME Church is sticking with its, sorry, I'm sucking on a cough drop, sticking with its ban on same-sex marriages, but the vote was close.
That's
this time.
encouraging.
Yeah.
Better than you're going to get from a lot of other places.
Step by step.
We will remember gay San Francisco science writer Steve Silberman and bisexual pioneer, also from San Francisco,
Yep.
Maggie Rubenstein.
And surprise, Iran is furious that the Australian embassy there celebrated LGBTQ people.
Yeah.
With cupcakes, no less.
And it's not like they had an orgy at the embassy or
No,
anything.
they had
It's very
cupcakes.
mild.
Cupcakes.
Cupcakes. In India, 70 people were arrested for using Grindr to lure gay men into robberies. This can happen anywhere, but they got these guys.
Yes, it's nice that they got them. And I'm reading that India is making little steps here, there, and everywhere towards our freedom and equality and safety, evidently. We have a picture of the first gay indigenous winner of the Mr. Universe contest.
The one that Arnold Schwarzenegger used to win all the time, but they have different standards now. Latin pop star Johan Vera has come out and Actor Rupert Everett has come out about being married.
A couple of things to review and I'd say recommend. Andy and I have slightly different opinions about one of them, but we will review the new gay-themed FX Hulu series English Teacher, which is the buzzy item this week, and the new documentary about how gay Abraham Lincoln was.
Oh, right.
Stay tuned. That's in the entertainment news section of the
the campaign
program.
continues. I was very encouraged to see this week that Vice President Harris's campaign for president is transferring $25 million to help down-ballot Democratic candidates.
More.
Winning the White House is not enough. Without the House and the Senate, you can't get anything done. If Dems lose the Senate, as seems likely right now, Republicans can block any and all appointments, not just to the federal courts, but even to her cabinet. They can say, no, you can't have that person.
Well, Trump's answer to that, he's just going to make temporary appointments, interim appointments to the cabinet for everybody, so he doesn't have to go through that nonsense of Democrats approving them.
Of democracy.
But I think Harris should cough up a little more money to those down-ballot candidates. Absolutely.
Because it's flooding in. And
yes.
this Saturday, her vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party, Tim Walz, is the keynote speaker at HRC's, Human Rights Campaign's, national dinner on Saturday night. So we'll have something to say about that next week when I'll be co-hosting with Marin Johns.
Correct. And is that the D.C. dinner?
Yes, the D.C. National Dinner.
I think it will be quite charming to have Tim Walz talking to a room full of homosexuals
as we showed
and
you
allies.
As we showed you on the show a couple of weeks ago when he spoke to the gay caucus at the Democratic National Convention,
Maybe
the LGBTQ caucus.
Wait, where did he take the kid? Was it to a movie, a play, something? We mentioned it last week. He could take them all out for something.
Yeah.
For ice cream at the state fair.
Okay. And how about that Trump?
Well, Trump went to the Moms for Liberty convention and sat down with one of their leaders.
Tiffany Justice.
What a name. Do you think that's her real name? It
She's
probably
from
is.
Brooklyn.
It probably is
She
her real
doesn't sound
name.
like she's from Brooklyn, but that's the stereotype. But,
Yeah, so Tiffany was interviewing Trump about all the issues, and he, of course, was nothing but a pack of lies from beginning to end all day long. But we have a little video of one section of his lies.
We believe that every parent has a fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children, right? And that includes their education. So what do you plan to do at the federal level to help us to protect parental rights and education freedom like school choice?
Okay, so I like to say that we're the party of common sense. I mean, we're conservative and all of that. But walls are common sense, right? All of the things we're talking about, no men and women's sports, no gender operation. I mean, these operations, it's crazy. You know, I don't know if you know, Europe has gone totally away from it now.
Yes, sir.
We're way behind them. They don't do it anymore. And this is just horrible.
That's insane. I mean, of course, is acting like you go to school and you come back and you've had a gender reassignment
He
surgery.
said that. That was another one of his quotes.
Yes.
The kids go to school, they come back having had surgery.
A few days later.
Yeah.
Now, so it is insane. And of course, that's supposed to be a nonprofit organization. But Tiffany Justice sat there and said, we're nonpartisan. But I am personally endorsing you. And the crowd went wild.
Well, we're nonpartisan also.
Yeah, I know.
Let's not get too deeply into nonpartisan.
You know, if Trump does win, then I am in favor of doing what they want to do and get rid of the U.S. Education Department, because he is eyeing Oklahoma School Superintendent Ryan Walters to be Education Secretary.
Yes, they're going to...
I would get rid of the department rather than have that guy run it.
Oh, they're going to throw him out of Oklahoma, and he's going to land at the... Well, in his first term, it was Betsy DeVos.
Yes, it was a horror show.
And who doesn't believe in public education, and neither does Ryan Walters, and neither do any of the Republicans. They want charter schools only, and that's where they want to put the money.
But back to Moms for Liberty, Trump also pledged to withhold federal funds from schools that teach about structural racism or recognized transgender identities and promised a Christian-inflected curriculum in schools. He spoke out against trans athletes. He falsely made a whole tirade on this, falsely claiming that the women's Olympic gold medalist, Imani Khalif, was transgender, which she is not. So the lies and the sexism never stop.
Well, and then he goes all over the place on abortion and IVF. The federal government.
What do you mean he's going to let us have IVF?
$40,000 a pop.
Yeah.
He'll bankrupt the country in about 6 months, and the right wing doesn't believe in IVF. So how's he going to deal with that?
On a press call, his campaign official said Trump will limit transgender therapies, crack down hard on sex reassignment surgeries in hospitals. These are for adults.
And when asked how he
punish schools that allow students to identify as a gender that does not match their sex at birth.
He talks off the top of his head. This all started 10 years ago when he started running, or 9 years ago. And when Chris Matthews tried to pin him down on, well, what are you going to do about women who have abortions? Are you going to?
Well, there has to be some punishment.
Yeah. Well, he made that up in real time there. It was not anything he thought about.
He was sitting there nervous that he was not going to be anti-abortion enough.
Yes.
So he said, well, there has to be some punishment.
Well, no, he just continues to make stuff up off the top of his head. And so at first he says, it has to be, in Florida, it has to be longer than 6 weeks for women to have a window to get an abortion. So I'm voting, I'm not voting for this proposed amendment. Well, the amendment is the thing that expands the window. He doesn't even know what the amendment says.
Oh, he does? He just does. It's
then he
insane.
backtracked and
Why would anybody vote for this guy? We are nonpartisan.
Well, when asked how he's going to accomplish all these things, he says, I'm president. President can do anything.
Has a lot of power.
Yeah.
Going back to Imani Khalif, the boxer who was born a woman and is still a woman. So this birth certificate with the right wing only goes so far. They always want to say, what's on your birth certificate? And that's how we're going to judge you. Well, that's the way it is with Khalif. So Kamala might point out in the debate when this comes up that he doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman.
It's over my head.
Okay.
Meanwhile, he's saying nasty, sexist things about her and accusing her and Hillary of getting ahead by giving sexual favors.
Well, it's grotesque.
Yes.
Some anti-abortion activists are angry about his pledge to cover the IVF, calling it worse than Obamacare's contraceptive mandate.
Here's my prediction. They will all vote for him.
Well, that's what they say about us, too. We'll all come home in the end, even though we disagree about some issues.
Sometimes we don't.
All right.
All right, let's go to his vice presidential running mate.
So J.D. Vance piled on Bud Light when the right-wingers lost their minds over the beer using trans Dylan Mulvaney as an influencer last year. Vance said, if a company that depends heavily on working-class Republicans wants to insult its consumer base, it is going to suffer consequences, but not from JD. Let's go to the picture there. There he is holding a Bud Light,
drinking from a Bud Light
at a campaign stop in Erie, Pennsylvania, and it's not the first time that he's been caught.
No, there are others.
With the prohibited substance.
Now the boycott has sort of petered out.
Yeah.
But it's still not cool on the right wing to drink Bud Light, I think.
Well, I still won't buy Coors beer after, we boycotted it 50 years ago, whatever it was.
That's a long time. And Randy Weingarten attacked head of the teachers union, lesbian, married to another lesbian, and has two
Sharon Kleinbaum, a rabbi.
Has two children, is the stepmother to Sharon's two children. And Randy is saying, thank goodness Vance isn't a teacher, because he has no empathy, and he should be helping kids, not attacking.
Right. Now, of course, we've told you all about, this assault on trying to get corporations to stop having DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, any kind of sensitivity training, and especially don't cooperate with the Human Rights Campaign on their Corporate Equality Index, right? So.
Which we always thought was a little lacking.
All right, all right.
Well, because their scorecard is, they're a little generous to corporations.
Well, let's see how generous they become now. Human Rights Campaign's Kelly Robinson, we have a picture of her speaking at the Democratic National Convention, which she did last week. She has hit back at Ford, for instance, Ford Motor Company, for joining corporations that caved to this right-wing pressure and are now refusing to cooperate. Kelly said Ford is cowering to internet troll Robbie Starbuck and signing that, and signaling that inclusion is no longer a priority in their workplace, failing to support women leaders, employees of color, and LGBTQ employees. She said Starbuck is a MAGA bully whose only business experience is hawking vitamins marketed by people profiting off COVID disinformation.
Well, he's a clever targeter. As has been pointed out elsewhere, he picks companies whose adherence to DEI and inclusion on the HRC list is relatively recent, and that they think that this is no big deal to pull back under attack from the right wing.
The fact is, the Corporate Equality Index now has more participating businesses than ever before. It grew from 20 years ago, 319 businesses in its first year, to more than 1,300 today. And it evaluates every Fortune 500 company, whether or not they submit the additional information. So they're still going to rate these companies, and they're going to tell you. And,
well, I hope the companies are punished on the index for getting rid of DEI.
And for not filling out their forms.
Yeah.
Dropping DEI policies, according to one analyst, creates actually an economic advantage for companies that retain their policies and want to promote from their rivals. So, you make yourself a company that is not a welcoming place for people of color and gay people, will get your best employees.
It has certainly been the case over the years that employees have voted with their feet.
Yeah.
They do prefer to work for companies that have protections, and they will shun companies that, for instance, go set up in Texas or other states that are unwelcoming, and that has had a significant effect over the years.
Obviously, we've had some exodus from Florida of LGBTQ people who are fed up with all the anti-gay laws there. They end up moving somewhere else. You get a brain drain.
Well, some of it is about services they can't get for their kids anymore or in their schools. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the Visit Florida tourist website that used to show LGBTQ visitors where to go and what to do, and has now dropped all that. And the head of it, the CEO of the Visit Florida operation, said, well, we are required to conform to what state law says. Well, there's no state law that says you can't be gay in Florida. They're trying, but they haven't accomplished that yet. And it turns out that this Visit Florida Chamber of Commerce kind of operation is funded by corporations.
And by the state.
And the corporations are withdrawing their support from the Visit Florida.
Over this?
Yes.
How about that? Money talks.
And somebody walks.
Keep your state money.
Yeah.
All right. Now the whole issue of transgender health and everything is all before the courts. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta is poised to let states that ban gender-affirming care for minors, even with parental consent, it covers Florida, Alabama, and Georgia, lifting an injunction by District Judge Robert Hinkle in Florida. The Circuit Court denied also en banc review. So now, and the other thing that's happening this week is a lot of this is going before the Supreme Court. And 164 members of Congress and most of the professional associations, they're all filing amicus briefs defending the right of trans Americans to access medically necessary health care.
This is in a case from Tennessee, which is before the Supreme Court now. It could take a while for them to get around to hearing it and deciding it.
Well, it's going to be heard this term.
well, this term starts in October. It could be next June before you get a decision,
of course.
if then, because they don't have to decide
Right.
within the term. And I wonder how the election might affect that. But that case is at the Supreme Court. So 164 members of Congress, as you said, have signed an amicus brief.
And my fear is that most of these Republican judges, especially the ones appointed by Trump, they get all their news from Fox. And Fox beats this issue to death every single day. If there's anything remotely trans, they're on it, and they think that's the news. And
Yeah.
so there you are. But the New Hampshire Supreme Court upheld the Manchester School District's policy supporting trans students and student privacy.
Nice. Well, you're right. But I was pleased to see that Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was on The View today as we tape. Yes.
With her book?
She's got a new book, and she was there talking about. I had to leave in the middle to come do this, but I'm sure it's available on demand. Today's show of The View, you can watch Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Well, of course, it was great that, she spoke out in her interview, I guess it was on CBS, Sunday morning, about how the presidential immunity decision is just out of line. I mean, this is not our tradition where we hold everybody to the same standard of the law.
Well, I do appreciate hearing that from her and from the other women on the court, most of them. And
Except for Amy Coney Barrett.
well, she was on the side of the other women recently, and
She is on one
something.
thing, yes.
Yeah. So, but it's depressing that we have hit this severe line of division on the court.
Yes.
And that there doesn't look to be much we can do about it.
Some of it, of course, is that the Republicans, sensing their opportunity, got rid of the filibuster in confirming Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
That 60-vote thing used to force Democrats and Republicans to push for candidates more in, I don't want to say the middle, but they had to be now. But now they can just put radicals on the court,
Yes.
like the crazy people in Texas.
Well, it's just another reason that we must hold on to the Senate and the presidency.
Exactly, because otherwise we can't get new judges in.
And otherwise, we'll have 9 crazies on the court.
Right. Idaho's Republican Governor Brad Little issued an executive order undermining the Biden administration's Title IX guidance protecting LGBTQ students. He called it the Defending Women's Sports Act. This is their line. He and the legislature already banned trans women and girls from women and girls sports in 2020, but it was blocked that August through an ACLU lawsuit.
Right.
So Biden's Title IX rules have been blocked by federal judges in 26 states. We're not winning on this issue.
Look, we still don't have full non-discrimination laws in about that many states.
Right.
We've made no progress on that.
Let's get busy. Let's take back our state legislatures.
Let's keep
Hey.
the presidency first.
Hey, it was a heavy lift in New York to get the state gay rights bill passed and the Gender Identity Non-Discrimination Act passed. It was, so I understand how more difficult it can be in these other states.
Well, and you have details on publishers and writers suing Florida.
Yeah, there are 7 publishers and some best-selling authors who are suing state officials over the law restricting books in school libraries. Students and parents are suing too. Hundreds of titles have been banned since the law went into effect in July 2023. Everything from, but this is like not just, of course, LGBTQ, but it's things like Brave New World, Tom Sawyer, A Tale of Two Cities, and of course works by Judy Blume, Margaret Atwood, and Stephen King, and Anne Frank. So anyway, plaintiffs say the ban violates the Supreme Court's Miller test for evaluating media content for obscenity.
Yes.
Which was extended to minors in a 1975 decision. So they want to restore the discretion of trained educators to evaluate books to avoid harm to students and who will otherwise lose a wide range of viewpoints.
This is just anti-intellectualism on steroids.
It's beyond anti-intellectual.
But it's
it's
a
beyond
long-
everything. It's just against.
It's a
These are not
forced
intellectual
ignorance.
titles in many
No, but I
cases.
mean that in the sense of They don't want to know anything other than what they think they know. They're not curious. They're not, and they want to cut down curiosity, and they don't want to open the world to people through books. They want to just rigidly slam the door, build the wall, keep everybody inside. No more books. No more.
We're going to get to it, but I was very interested in the Lincoln documentary. How he's a poor kid working on a farm for a brutal father, and he finds his refuge in books, and that's what opens him up. If he could get his hand on a book, he read it.
It's an old story. That's what books are all about: is opening up the world to people.
Yeah.
You must have found that. I
Absolutely.
found that in my youth.
Absolutely.
Of course, I was reading a lot of horse books, but that's another story.
All right.
All right. Well, here's a tiny footnote of sunshine. In Texas, on October 6th, the town of Frisco, north of Dallas, will hold a Pride Fest. You don't think of Texas these days as holding much in the way of Pride Fest, but Frisco will hold it on October 6th. Everybody go to Frisco.
They're all over Texas. And the Massachusetts legislature passed the LGBTQI long-term care bill of rights to advance care for our vulnerable older people and older people living with HIV. We're going to link to a story about the specifics on that for those of you who are interested in our email. Just go to our website, gayusatv.org, and you can sign up for our email. Join the other 3,500 people or so who are on it.
But the AME Church is only slowly making progress and being dragged inch by inch into the 21st century.
They, at their 52nd quadrennial convention, which means they've been around for a long time, they voted
200 years.
They voted to strike down their ban on a bill to strike down their ban on same-sex marriage. And while it was voted down, the motion, it was close. 722 for lifting the ban, 896 against, which is about 1,000 times better than such denominations as the Roman Catholic Church, where they don't really vote on anything, Orthodox Judaism and Islam. No less.
Well, the
Southern Baptist
Presbyterians
Convention.
and the Lutherans have only recently joined us.
Lots of mainstream Protestantism is coming around on that.
Slowly. All right. A couple of different kinds of stories. In New York City, there was a case 3 years ago where a police officer, Yvonne Wu, now 34, there she is, and an, I assume, out lesbian. She had an ex, Jenny Lee, and Jenny Lee had a new girlfriend, Jamie Liang, and Yvonne was jealous and upset about all this, and she
went into a jealous rage.
She shot her ex, Jenny Lee, and she killed Lee's new girlfriend, Jamie Liang. And now Yvonne has been sentenced to 27 years in prison on a plea deal.
Yeah, 5 years for the attempted murder of Jenny Yi and 22 for the first-degree manslaughter of Jamie Liang.
Liang's parents are suing the NYPD for $25 million. They said that Yvonne was crazy and shouldn't have had a gun.
Oh, a lot of people shouldn't, but of course it's a right in this country, isn't it?
And
the prosecution for that case, by the way, had to be handled by the Attorney General of New York, Tish James.
Yeah.
Her office, of course. Liang was a studious 24-year-old studying to be a dentist at NYU. Sad passing.
Tragic. And in Pensacola, Florida, it always comes back to Florida, out gay Stephen Thorne, 66 years old, retired, has been sentenced to 5 years in prison, double the amount of time requested by the prosecution, because he threatened a judge who upheld Florida's Don't Say Gay law. He threatened the judge, and he's going to prison for 5 years. There are a lot of threats coming from the right wing to people all over the country, and those people are not going to prison.
Well, let's just hope Imani Khalef, the boxer, can put Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and who's the other one?
Peter Thiel?
J.K. Rowling
Oh.
in jail. 'Cause they
All
are
right,
being investigated for hate crimes.
Yes, but they would have to go to
By
jail in
France.
France, right?
In Philadelphia, they're trying to be inclusive. They have a marathon, and they're now awarding winners over 3 categories: men's, women's, and non-binary.
Right.
Non-binary was added in 2022, but without a cash prize, and the non-binary category is the only one that's not at the elite level. At USA Track and Field, the sports governing body, has guidelines for binary trans participants, but not non-binary athletes or categories. So the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, though, this is all progress, has granted a therapeutic use exemption to a non-binary runner who takes testosterone as part of gender-affirming care. I mean, this is a city that is trying to cope with these things and do the right thing.
And was trying to do the right thing when they cut Catholic social services out of foster care because they had a law against discrimination. And then the Catholic agency beat them because the law wasn't strict enough.
Right.
Hey, all right. We lost a couple of significant people this week, both in San Francisco. First of all, out Steve Silberman, 66 years old.
Science writer.
Leaves his husband, Keith Carraker, science journalist. He wrote a book called Tribes, The Legacy of Autism and the Future of Neurodiversity in 2015. And that's considered a very fundamentally important book.
His TED Talk on the forgotten history of autism has been viewed nearly 2 million times. But he also had this other interest in the Grateful Dead.
Yes.
And David Lemieux, the Grateful Dead's archivist and legacy manager, said Silberman was one of the brightest lights I've ever met over the past 25 years. He wrote liner notes for the Grateful Dead. Very important occupation, actually, in records.
Revered as a science writer and revered as a Grateful Dead expert.
And he's got a book on cystic fibrosis that is due out next year.
Yes, they're posthumously publishing his book, or as Donald Trump would say, posthumously.
Also, that's how the whole world's going to start saying it under his regime.
Okay.
Also out of San Francisco, Dr. Maggie Rubenstein, San Francisco's godmother of sex education. She has died at 93 in Red Bluff. Now, she was a PhD nurse, and she was a longtime bisexual and sex-positive community activist and faculty member at the Institute for the Advanced Study of Sexuality. Earlier, she specialized in sex therapy, became dean of students after lesbian activist Phyllis Lyon and sexologist Ward Pomeroy retired. She came out as bi in the 60s, and she was famous for going to meetings. And if someone would say, referred to lesbian and gay, she would shout, and bisexual at the meetings. Whether it was a government meeting or a community meeting, she was getting it out there.
Plus ça change.
She was a co-founder of the San Francisco Bisexual Center in 1976 and of the San Francisco Sex Info Hotline. And she was very key in sex-positive prevention programs when the AIDS crisis hit. So really a pioneer and tremendous loss. But 93, a good long life.
Absolutely. All right, international news.
Okay.
How about that Enoch Burke? Oh, wait.
We got Jonathan Berry first.
Jonathan Berry first. We'll start with the good news.
All right. He's an out model, Jonathan Berry. Got a picture of him there. There he is. He made history at the Mr. Universe contest, as I said, the one that Arnold Schwarzenegger used to win. It's now billed as the pageant for global male excellence. Berry is the first gay Indigenous Australian to win the title. He's also an actor and comedian and represents the Aboriginal people at Sydney World Pride. As a proud LGBTQI plus advocate, he said, "I hope my participation in Mr. Universe shows others that they can pursue their dreams regardless of societal norms."
So it used to be just a big weightlifting contest.
Yeah, bodybuilding.
Yes, but now it's broader.
Yes.
So to speak. All right, well, now to Ireland and teacher Enoch Burke. He's an anti-trans evangelical Christian in Ireland. He is about to serve his 3rd jail term. He taught at a high school. He refused to honor people's preferred pronouns or teach anything about gender identity or expression. So he got fired, but he wouldn't leave it alone. He keeps coming back to campus and trying to demonstrate and demand his job back.
I am being persecuted for my faith, he says.
Well,
But he's being locked up for defying a court order, and
he's trespassing.
He's a threat, you know.
He won't quit.
He is hell-bent on his crusade against trans people. I don't think he's read the Bible, which says, in Christ, there is neither male nor female. I keep bringing this up.
What more do you want?
I keep bringing this up,
Yeah.
but they don't seem to hear it. Read your Bible.
And then a pastor in Germany, a conservative Protestant pastor, Olaf Lotzel, who called homosexuality degenerative and demonic,
And criminal.
has been convicted of incitement of hate.
Well, he was yelling all this at a Berlin Pride celebration.
So what?
Well, I'm just saying that's where he was doing. We've been subjected to this at Pride
Please.
celebrations all the time.
Still,
Called all kinds of names.
well, we've done a lot of name-calling stories just today.
What's the Baptist, the church?
Westboro?
Westboro, God Hates Fags Ministries.
Yes.
They would come to New York to protest everything.
Yep.
The gay synagogue, then they protested.
Funerals.
They protested the Pope when he visited, and I saw them there, and they recognized me, and they go, Andy, God is going to drop kick you to hell. Just like that. They're very cheerful about it.
Well, they're happy.
And they were indefatigable. They were everywhere. They'd come to a city
Not
and they'd...
so much anymore.
No, you don't see them anymore, but they would do like 7 demonstrations. Well, they've had some defectors, and they never were a very large group.
No,
and I
no.
don't know where they got all their money to travel.
Well, they just were a large family.
Yeah.
Who from Topeka,
Kansas, yeah.
Topeka, Kansas, and they did a lot of fundraising, and people who agreed with them sent them money, and since there weren't a lot of them, they could travel with that money.
Somebody bought the house across the street from them and painted it in rainbow colors. That was nice.
Yes, very
but
nice.
this pastor, has to pay a $5,000 fine and he has to pay it to the Advice and Action Center for Queer Life in Bremen. And he admits he made statements that hurt people.
He apologized.
And he says, I have nothing against gay people.
It's just the issues.
Well, there's some people who have something against us in India. They've been using Grindr to trap gay men and rob us. And so the police arrested 70 of them in 4 cities based on 22 complaints that were made to the police. And they were targeting primarily young people here. And the police urge caution when using the app.
In some countries, it is the police who are trapping gay men on Grindr.
You don't want to be on Grindr in Iran, for instance.
No, or any of the...
You'll end up dead.
Yeah.
Oh, they have the death penalty there. So let's talk about Iran.
Yeah. Well, the Australian embassy in Iran held a celebration of LGBTQ inclusion. Wear It Purple Day, which I guess there's Purple Day, some version of Purple Day here. So there are representatives from the Australian embassy and holding purple frosted cupcakes, but the government of Iran is not happy about this.
No, they condemned the posting of the photos of the event on social media as contrary to Iranian and Islamic culture and international norms. Purple cupcakes. Ambassador McConville of Australia said Australia had not insulted Iran. The photo of him and colleagues in purple outfits said they were dedicated to creating a supportive environment where everyone, especially LGBTQIA youth, can feel proud to be themselves. The penalty, of course, if you are proud to be yourself in Iran, is death, although it's only 100 lashes for women. It's death for men.
Well, this is two very different worldviews. One that is tolerant and
say.
inclusive, and the other that says it is only our way or the highway.
Yeah.
And those are, whatever topics you're talking about or whatever people, those are two very, very different worldviews.
And we have these strong right-wing forces in this country that are pushing to make this country like that.
Exactly, because the right wing that oppose us are, they want themselves to be the only people here. They want to get rid of everybody else.
And, whatever, and I know some of you are suffering in states where they have all these anti-gay laws now and things, and it does feel awful, but our mission has to be to live counterculturally, if that's the case.
Exactly. And we've done that before, certainly. More about that when we get to entertainment news.
So back in Australia,
Yeah.
The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese,
Yeah, the ambassador to Iran may be doing good things for us, but then back in the home country, not so much. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is being attacked because he wants to limit questions about LGBTQ people on the Australian census. And he's managed to cut it down to just one or two questions.
right, I mean, he said, we value everyone regardless of gender, faith, or sexual orientation. But,
We just don't want to hear about it.
but
So
the
we're not,
question does not include trans people.
or intersex.
Right.
It's strictly LGB, and everyone else is just not to be counted.
So the Green Party may bring up a motion to do so and test the Labour Party, which he's from, which is the more progressive party in Australia, test them on
Perhaps.
this issue, make
Yeah.
them vote on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it's trans stuff that is the wedge issue that
Oh, yeah.
makes the nervous. I mean, I read a story about New York. We have this thing on the ballot in New York, an equal rights amendment. It failed back in the 70s when it just covered sex, and now it includes reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, et cetera. And so the Republican, and it was brought up in New York so that it would, generate enthusiasm for Democratic candidates across the state. But now the
Poll
Republicans are
turnout.
using it to saying, you're trying to make boys play on girls' teams. That's their line.
And that's going to be their turnout device to their advertising around the state, emphasizing just solely trans sports participation.
Right.
And that's going to drive the right-wingers to the polls. And they may not elect Trump in New York. That still seems like a stretch. But they could elect a lot of members of Congress, and they could defeat this Equal Rights Amendment.
And, when this was put forward, this Equal Rights Amendment, which was a long-time goal, $20 million was pledged for the campaign, and only $3 million has materialized on our side. So it's going to be tough.
The Democratic Party of New York has said that they don't want to spend money on this. But now that's been revealed, so maybe that'll change.
I will remind you that in New York, we are protected on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Reproductive rights are protected. I mean, this would have put it in the Constitution, but if it goes down, that's a blow.
It is.
As it was in the 70s when New York voted down just covering sex.
Who knows what havoc can result from that.
In Paraguay, the new sex ed curriculum is abstinence only. It says sex is God's invention for married people. It warns that
Really?
condoms don't work, and it says nothing about sexual orientation or gender identity.
What about animals?
And it says masturbation causes frustration and isolation. The Catholic Paraguay has the highest rate of teen pregnancy in Latin America.
Not a surprise. Meanwhile, next door, Uruguay is one of the most LGBTQ-friendly countries in South America.
Got to know your guys.
All right. In Ecuador, popular pop star Johan Vera has come out as gay. He's 28. He's single. That's an old picture of him on the left with Ricky Martin on the right.
Who was sort of his sponsor.
Yeah, and this is all around his release of a music video, a new song called Closet. So there's a more contemporary picture of him. And
now that he's out of the closet.
Actually, I think he says he likes men and women, so I may be
He's
mischaracterizing.
out of the closet about all of it.
Yes.
In Hungary, our U.S. ambassador, who's an out gay guy named David Pressman, there to Hungary, he publicly condemned the Speaker of the Hungarian National Assembly, who denied elected representatives access to parliamentary rooms when they wanted to have a caucus meeting about LGBTQ rights. They had to go to some university to have the meeting. So our ambassador stood up for them.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. The ambassadors are doing well. It's the leaders of the country who are less progressive.
And in London, you know, I'm going to put this in the email. In 1972, the first gay song recorded on vinyl, it was called A Gay Song, by the gay activists in London, was recorded. And as I said, we'll link to it. But recently they got together everybody who did it and they re-recorded it. And there's an exhibition about it there in Southampton at God's House Tower through October 22nd. Back in 72, 1,000 copies of the album were just given out free. And there's a film of all this, a documentary, which sounds like it could be interesting.
I wonder if any of those vinyl records are still around, and if so, how much they're worth.
Yeah. And does anybody have a machine that can play them?
Exactly.
I can't even play my VHS tapes anymore.
Yeah. Rupert Everett, who was sort of dragged out of the closet kicking and screaming some years ago and complaining that it had ruined his career, has now announced that he married his long-term boyfriend, Enrique.
He's 65 years old. Enrique is a Brazilian accountant. They had a low-key ceremony at London's Camden Hall, followed by lunch at an Italian place. He said he always hated weddings, though he does love funerals.
That was a fairly old picture, too. We searched for more contemporary pictures of them and did not find them. So I think those must have been COVID era pictures.
Yes,
because
just like with the
masks.
German pastor.
Yeah.
And country music star Billy Gilman, 32, who was a runner-up on season 11 of The Voice, has married his partner, Anthony Carbone, 36, in Gilman's home state of Rhode Island. 115 guests. They said it was a modest wedding. And they met through friends at a Providence bar in 2022. Gilman's been out, though, since 2014.
Well, as long as we're doing the marriage news, we'll also mention that Joel Kim Booster, the very popular actor and comedian who was the author and star of Fire Island, has become engaged to his boyfriend, John Michael Sudsino, who's a video games creator. They met a few years ago when Joel Kim was on vacation in Puerto Vallarta. And I don't know if he reached out through Grindr or whatever, but they had a hookup and both said to each other, of course, you know, nothing's going to come of this. This is just what it is. Well, now they're getting married. So it's a
Congratulations, fellas.
Congratulations to both of them.
Any more international
No. AIDS
news? So the Biden-Harris administration, you remember them? They announced $1.4 billion in funding as part of the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program to assist low-income people with HIV to obtain life-saving medications. The announcement was made at the opening of HRSA's National Ryan White Conference on HIV Care and Treatment in D.C. that had more than 6,500 people in attendance.
Wow.
As of 2022, 89.6% of Ryan White program clients receiving care were virally suppressed, compared to 69.5% in 2010. So we are making progress on that front.
And Biden's poll numbers are going up.
Biden? Yes. Well, there's a glow about him now that is.
There is. He's more relaxed.
That he is selfless.
Well, I hope that none of that money is going to buy the fake HIV medications that are circulating. They've been arresting people. This kind of story pops up periodically. People see an opportunity and they just,
this was
they're
out in
shameless.
Queens. These guys who did this were sentenced to 9 years in prison. It was an $18 million scheme. Sheriff seized $750,000 worth of counterfeit medication. Peter Kaim had already been found guilty for fraud and money laundering, and now Gilead is suing them over this. These were 2 pharmacies in Queens. And on September 22nd, on Sunday, it's the Broadway Cares Broadway Flea Market and Grand Auction in and around Schubert Alley in Times Square, West 44th Street, 45th Street. More information at broadwaycares.org.
A lot of Broadway memorabilia contributed by actors and others.
Memorabilia programs, but there'll be all the Broadway celebrities will be there signing autographs, and they'll be auctioning off all kinds of things.
Which brings us to entertainment news.
Yes.
All right.
The new movie from out director Pedro Almodovar, The Room Next Door, premiered at the Venice Film Festival, starring Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. It received a 17-minute standing ovation, and it's his first English language feature. It takes place in New York between 2 friends reconnecting as one of them is dying of cancer. It opens in theaters December 20th.
Well, also very popular at the Venice Film Festival is the new movie Queer, starring Daniel Craig in a gay role. This is the latest movie from Luca Guadagnino, who did Call Me By Your Name. And famously in Call Me By Your Name, or Your Name, yes, they start to have they start to have a sex scene, and then it cuts away out the window to trees. So in this one,
for the gay scene, not for the straight scene.
Yeah, well, in this one, not only is there endless explicit gay sex, but
explicit.
In one of them, in one scene, they're about to have sex, and Guadagnino cuts out the window to the trees and then comes back.
Well, Daniel, of course, who was James Bond, wanted a new experience, and he got it. This is based on a William Burroughs novel.
Yes.
And it's
but
taking
it's
place in Mexico, and he's got a cute boyfriend.
Very big hit at the Venice Film Festival, except for those, of course, who said they were extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. My God.
All right, so we have that, and just a footnote. Hulu is now running the entire first season of a lesbian dating show, I Kissed a Girl, which evidently was quite popular, in anticipation of the release of the second season.
And there's also one called I Kissed a Boy, isn't there?
I don't know. I haven't seen either one of them.
No. All right, are we going to talk about English Teacher?
Sure.
This is on FX and Hulu, starring Brian Joseph Alvarez, an out gay man, playing an out gay teacher.
He created it, and he stars in it.
At a Texas high school.
Austin, Texas.
Now, I would say, look.
Austin, Texas.
All right, which is, it's very gay, and it covers a lot of timely gay issues, and the characters are very likable. I wouldn't say it's laugh out loud funny, but amusing. It's being compared a lot to Ted Lasso.
Excuse me.
There are 8, they only shot 8 episodes, and they're going to be...
But it's, again, a big hit. It's very popular. It starts with him in trouble at the school.
No, it starts with a viewer warning about content.
Yes, it does. But the story starts with him in trouble because a parent has complained that her son saw him as a teacher kissing his boyfriend.
Yeah,
he claims...
Who was another teacher.
Yeah. And he says, well, it's because your son is gay and you're unhappy about that, which is true. But he also says, I just pecked him on the cheek. And then you see him having a flashback, and they're practically tongue in tongue, and the boyfriend is reaching around and grabbing his rear end.
You sure that wasn't a fantasy scene?
I don't think so.
Because they'd broken up.
Yes.
They had broken up.
But they're still friends.
But anyway, English Teacher on FX, and of course, archived there on Hulu, so you can see it anytime.
Yeah, they ran the first 2 episodes, the pilot and then the first episode, Monday nights.
Brian Joseph Alvarez. And now...
I found, and the reason Trixie Mattel of RuPaul's Drag Race was in the picture with Alvarez...
Yeah, why was that?
Because the plot in the first 2 episodes is that they do a reversal thing every year where the girls in the school play football players and the boys become cheerleaders.
Something
in
about
drag.
powder puffs.
Yes. And there's some controversy about whether they're going to do that. And Alvarez says, oh, no, it's all in fun. He brings in Trixie Mattel to teach the boys how to really do drag. And Trixie Mattel's in the episode.
Okay.
It's a hit. And then he pulls out, so to speak, of the event, and the boys go ahead and do it anyway.
Is your thing, is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
You're working fine.
All right.
We're just checking the mics. All right. Lover of men. And who are we talking about? Abraham Lincoln here.
Yeah.
It's the untold history of Abraham Lincoln in theaters on September 6th. Actually, HRC is hosting the opening. It's directed by Sean Peterson. It's 142 minutes. It's a very serious documentary full of Lincoln scholars testifying to his love of men and how he slept with men far more than women. List them all. They also do recreations of course, they describe, how he slept with men on these cots.
These very narrow beds.
We've got this little shot there. This is when he was with Billy Green, pressed together. I mean, it's
a speculative recreation. There are no pictures of it or contemporary descriptions of it.
So all the old Lincoln scholars who are horrified by this, they're not in the film. But their line is, oh, it's the 19th century and everybody, everything was different. And many things were different then. But as they keep saying in the documentary, but not for 4 years would you sleep with the same guy when you had enough money for your own bed.
Well, he was offered his own room and own bed.
By Joshua Speed.
No.
Oh, Billy?
No. Some other colleague of his, a lawyer, maybe a partner or something in his law firm, said, come stay at my house. You can have your own room. You can have your own bed. And he said, no, thank you. I'll stay here in the twin-size cot with Joshua Speed.
And the Joshua Speed relationship was probably, this was the love of his life.
Well, this is all...
It's in the letters, Anne. I mean,
well,
seriously.
They're very affectionate letters.
Very affectionate.
Yes.
And when Joshua Speed goes off and gets married to a woman, as you did in those days, as you did probably here until the 1970s.
Please, people are still doing it.
But, well, of course, in Iran. But
here, too.
But, he was so distraught. I mean, he was distraught over the loss of his relationship with Joshua or the relationship that he had. It's quite intense.
And that happened not just then, too. One of his lovers, supposedly, was a soldier named Elmer Ellsworth, who was shot dead by a hotelier and when he went to take down the Confederate flag on the top of the hotel.
Lincoln's over here, and that's in Virginia, and he's looking over there, and there's a Confederate flag, so, Ellsworth says, I'll go get it, and they shoot him dead.
And Lincoln was reportedly inconsolable and bereft at that.
So he turned to Captain David Derrickson. We have a picture of all the boyfriends there. There's Billy Green, Joshua Speed, Ellsworth, and Derrickson.
Yes.
And they said, one of the scholars goes, he had a type. He said his type was dashing, put the pictures back up, dashing and diminutive.
And Derrickson would evidently share his White House bed when Mary Todd Lincoln was out of town. Mary...
Currently being played by...
Mary got a lot of this right.
Absolutely. And then they go into Carl Sandburg. We've often heard Carl Sandburg referred to the streak of lavender in Lincoln.
Yeah.
He wrote this in 1924, and in later editions took it out because,
Well, what I found interesting, it's a very worthwhile documentary to see, and it has a lot more information than us lay people have known going along. Larry Kramer, of course, insisted on this for decades, and I think had a lot about it in his American History book. But what the historians talk about in this documentary is how it was common to have same-sex relationships in the 19th century.
Men were with men and women were with women.
And it is only since we have put a label on it that it has become more stigmatized. And that if we had never put a label on it, perhaps it would have evolved as a natural, expression of sexuality.
Maybe we shouldn't have been doing the Gay USA show all these years.
It's all our fault.
Okay.
All right. Ian McKellen says if they want me to play Gandalf again, they better be quick.
And I guess we don't have time for that little clip about Mia Farrow
Next
and Patti
week.
LuPone
All right. Well,
on Broadway and The Roommate.
You'll be here next week with Maren Johns, and you'll dissect the debate, and I'll be back the week after.
Take care. Thanks for watching.